from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, we're going to talk about religion, politics, and the Black church. Stay tuned. Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and it is a pleasure to have you join me today on this podcast. I try to be very honest and uncensored in the podcast that I do, and I try to have real conversation. Joining me today is a good friend, John Hall, who is the former Deputy Mayor of Indianapolis under Mayor Stephen Goldsmith. And welcome, John.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, today, John, we want to get into, another hot topic. And we have done a series of podcasts on the status of Black America. But one of the other issues that, I would like to deal with today is an issue that I think is very important as we move forward as Black America. And it is the religion, politics, and the Black church. And what is the role of the Black church when it comes to politics and religion itself? And I know historically, the Black church has had to play a lot of different roles. And can we kind of talk about that a little bit and where we are today? Certainly, I have some concerns where the Black church is today. And when it comes to what we talked about, in the previous 4 podcasts about the status of Black America, I believe that the Black church can play a key role, particularly in some of the areas where we have either become stagnant as a people or there's been some regression. But I think the focus of the Black church has changed over years. And really, I've seen a dramatic change probably in my 40 years of pastoring. I'm coming out of the 1960s when I was born, and certainly the Black church played a very key role in the civil rights movement. And probably it was part of the historical role that the Black church has played really since slavery. So since slavery, the civil rights era. Can we talk a little bit about what was the role of the Black church during that time?
Well, I think if you dig deep down into it, in the 50s and 60s, your typical minister was going to be well-educated or educated and was of a small few that were capable of leading the community. And that position as a pastor, a minister, during that period of time lifted that individual high in the community, lots of respect from the public. And that enabled, in my opinion, the church, the Black church in particular, to play a major role in the civil rights movement, organizing, developing tools to use to combat blatant racism. We know that the boycott of the buses in Alabama, led to a loosening of some of that racism. But that leadership in the Black church were highly skilled, if not also highly educated.
Part of it was from slavery, and I think you're right, the role that clergy even played during slavery and the Black church. The minister almost played a dual role as both spiritual leader and political leader in addressing the societal issues that really started during slavery, and certainly we saw the impact of it during the civil rights era with the Montgomery bus boycott being led by, Dr. Martin Luther King, who at that time, I think he had his master's, his PhD, didn't he? His doctorate degree at that time.
Very highly skilled.
Yeah, very highly skilled, very highly skilled, very educated. And it was the role of black clergy and the black church, as you have articulated, that played a leading role in addressing the issue of segregation, voting rights, and all the issues of inequalities that existed.
And they were trusted.
Right.
So they had the audience, they had the following, and they could wield that power, in a positive way for the benefit of the masses.
So what role during that time did the church play with politics during the time of the civil rights era, when the black church played a key role? What role did politics play in what the black church was trying to achieve?
Well, I think in the 60s, the black church, because they were able in many areas to provide a voting block for politicians. I don't think in every area, but in a number of areas, they were able to provide that voting block, which then gave them leverage to find benefits that would benefit the masses, whether it was jobs, whether it was opportunities to get a loan from a bank, little things that could do big steps for the black masses in the community. They were the, and typically, you will hear a lot of people say, the more progressive black community would probably argue that, well, the minister was there to make sure peace was kept.
Okay. And what, with whom and in what way? To
make sure that the black community wasn't going to come up with any radical concept to overthrow the system.
Right.
And so, my progressive brothers would argue that, the black church sort of held it down, and that the minister was able to maybe benefit from having that high position and being able to call some shots.
But wouldn't history say that was the right approach with the role the black church played, and particularly Dr. King, who tended to leverage that voting block very well with both political parties, in the 1950s and 60s. So the voting block concentration, I'm not sure it was just with one party back then. I seem like Dr. King was able to do business with both sides of the political aisle, and both Republicans and Democrats during that time.
That's a very interesting question. African Americans voted predominantly Republican up until the 1930s, 32, when Roosevelt offered jobs.
Okay.
The WPA, the CCC camps allowed opportunities for blacks to either get groceries or get a job working on bridges and schools. And that shifted greatly the black vote. I think that King was able to lift, with his nonviolent approach, was successful in letting the European Americans see the abuse and the wrong that was happening to Black America with his nonviolent movement. And I would agree with you that probably was the only way blacks could have been so successful to move from that 10% black middle class to 40 plus black middle class today.
Wasn't Dr. King, wasn't he a Republican and during that time?
I believe so.
Okay, yeah. So the percentage of black Republicans and Democrats at that time in the 1960s probably is not as dramatic as it is today, would you say?
Definitely not. And early in the early stages of our growth and development, there were Republicans who supported civil rights and the Civil Rights Act.
Okay.
Early before 64. Even during 64, there were Republicans who voted for the Civil Rights Act. Today, you probably wouldn't get any of them voting for a Civil Rights Act today. So yes, a stark contrast. And, the piece that kind of stands out to me is that after Eisenhower, and Eisenhower is credited for bringing the troops down to Little Rock,
right,
helping those black kids get into the schools. He's the last, I think, Republican that got over 30-40% of the black vote.
Is the role of the black church today needed in the same way it was in the 1950s and 60s? Because it seems like to me there has been somewhat of a shift where the black church is primarily Democratic now. And when it comes to the plight of black America, we tend to look at legislation as the means for which we can achieve the goals that we have as a people today, more so than what the black church may have done in years past. Is that an accurate depiction of where the black church is today when it comes to almost voting 90% with Democrats? Is the Democratic Party now viewed by the black church as the engine to bring about, racial equality and policy changes that benefits the masses of black people?
I think that by the necessity of things, the black church and our black political leaders have made the Democratic Party their avenue for growth. And I would say, if you look at the picture, affirmative action, civil rights, voting protection, those have been critical elements to the black community on that piece. Because you asked a couple of questions.
Right.
It is different today than it was in the 40s and 50s and 60s in that the black church's role now has to be different.
Okay.
I don't think I think there is a political solution, but I think it's secondary. I think the black church now has to focus on repairing black families.
Okay.
I think that is the focus. And today, 2024, I couldn't see any African American participating with a party that has no regard for civil rights, for equality, for democracy. I can't see it today. The question is, what will be the future of the Republican Party after Trump? And will they again be a party that looks for fairness, justice under the law?
Right.
Those kinds of things to be able to compete. I don't see where Republicans are able to compete over the last 10 years.
Oh, that's absolutely true. But the question becomes, what progress has really been made in the last 30 years within the black community, particularly when you look at the urban core? We have seen a disintegration in black families. 74% of black children born into single-parent households. We have seen a dramatic gap between black youth and white youth and Asian youth and Hispanic youth. Blacks are still at the bottom when it comes to educational achievements in high school. And almost in every category, blacks are still lagging behind. So when it comes to that, who's benefiting from our allegiance and putting all of our eggs into one basket? Is it the black elected officials, the the upper echelon blacks in our society, which is about 10%, those wealthy, the Tiger Woods, the Oprah Winfreys, the Jay-Z's, the Beyoncé's. Me and you would be in that middle class, that 47%. But you still have maybe 43% that is the working poor and are still struggling. And that doesn't seem to have moved much in the last 20 years.
And that is the piece of this puzzle that I think we keep looking for, that political solution.
Right.
And it's not a political solution. I would contend that Patrick Moynihan hit it in 1965.
Okay.
That with the disintegration of the black family, you were going to see a period in where there was the chaos within the urban core in that area where black achievement is what you want,
right?
But it's not going to be what you get,
right?
Because families are no longer skilling up their young children, making sure they're reading by the third grade, staying together with two incomes so they can provide. That's not happening for a huge percentage, not only in the African American community, but in the European American community. And I don't see where legislation, we tried to do, Head Start.
Right.
It was a good piece, and, they trying to say, well, they went to Head Start, but after they got to the sixth grade, it all went away. The achievements all went away. So, the question is, where do we need to focus our resources? And it's got to be upon that black family, especially those who are struggling with one income to try to make a life for 2 or 3 children.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison on the Indiana Podcast Network. And my special guest today is John Hall. And we're talking about religion, politics, and the black church. John, there were several notes that I took down, as we were talking before the podcast about what the black church should be doing. And there were 3 things that you said that really caught my attention. One, which you already articulate, rebuilding the black family or repairing the black family. Number 2 is working on black families getting skilled up, helping the black families to get skilled up. That connects black families to jobs and jobs training, so that they can begin to increase their income or their wealth, within our community. As I heard you talk about that, one of the challenges that I feel that we have as the black church is that we don't seem to be as connected to the masses of black people in 2024 as we were in 1940, 1950, and 1960, when the black church had that audience. I'm not for sure we have that audience anymore. And I think it would be a shift in the thinking of black preachers and the black church to refocus our efforts on how do we repair the black family when the black family looks different today than in 1960, and that black family tends not to be in the church.
That is that you just hit it right on the head, because it is different. There in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, the black church was the TV.
Right. Okay.
It was the radio. It was the vinyl record. That's where you went to get direction. And we bought, African-American families were there. They were buying into it. In 2024, you've got Hollywood, videos, movie stars,
right,
basketball stars.
Right.
You've got 15 to 20 other vocal pieces that are getting the attention of youth, all youth, but particularly African-American youth that may not have a strong family unit to keep them focused on the goal. And so to me, that is so much. It's so much more difficult now for that African American church to get the attention of the single mother or the family that's trying to get up and out to come to church, and then there's nothing that we can offer them that's going to hit me today. Yes, I listen to Jesus Christ. I hear your teachings, and I want to believe, and I believe.
Right.
But tomorrow, I've got to pay the rent.
Right.
Tomorrow, I've got to get the food. The long-term thinking is missing.
Right.
If you can get Junior to read by the 3rd grade, he may not suffer as hard as you're suffering.
Right.
So how does, I once thought when I was working with Goldsmith and I pitched this idea. I said, you know what? If we could give black churches a few $1 million apiece, and they could work with low-income individuals, counsel them, train them, help them get skilled, and then they would use this money for anybody that wanted to partner up. Anybody. Now, that's anybody.
Right.
They could get a down payment on a house.
Right.
Which might encourage increasing family unity. But nobody bought my idea. And so I'm sitting here now. But I thought that would be a good way for black churches to get involved and offer something that might strengthen individuals who want a different life.
Yeah, but I think you make a good point. And I think people today are more interested in the moment, the here and now, rather than them going to heaven after they die.
Yes.
And I think that the church ought to be able to address both, but I'm not for sure we do address both. When, Junebug is hungry, and so is his siblings, and mom is struggling to provide for them, what is the role of the church? And I don't think the church does enough to teach the formula of success. How did we go from, in 1960, 13% middle class to a 47% middle class? And how do we then take that model and use that model as a model for still the poor, the working poor, or the underclass, whatever term you want to use, for the masses of people? And I think the church is in a unique position to do that. I don't think we have effectively done that because too much of our attention is we focus on getting buses and vans to take people to vote, but not to take people to get skilled up.
Whoa, watch out, Pastor.
Yeah, and we do. We will mobilize vans and buses to get people downtown to vote for the Democratic Party, to put people in office. And year after year, nothing changes, but every 4 years, we're busing people down to the polls. But we're not doing that to help people improve the quality of their life so that, listen, most of us understand that a 2-income household is better than a 1-income household, unless the 1 income is making significant money.
Yes.
So
the formula is not a white formula or a blue formula.
That's right.
Or a black formula. If you plan to get ahead,
yes,
in China,
yes,
in Russia, in France, in Germany, and here in America,
yes,
you've got to be skilled.
Yeah, you do. And that's where I want to challenge the black church, is that if we put as much energy into helping get politicians elected, and we're willing to invest money in taking vans and buses to go downtown and vote, why can't we be just as energetic and committed to repairing black families and helping to skill up black families so that they can have the kind of jobs that are necessary in order for them to live a better quality life?
I would agree with that. And I don't want to diminish the fact that in 2024, I want churches and everybody to get them vans out and get people to the polls.
Yeah,
they got to vote.
I hear you, but if we do that in 2024 and then we're having the same conversation in 2028, then it was no benefit to us in 2028 if we're not making the kind of changes. I don't want to, to still be worried about getting robbed and turning on the news and every day somebody's getting shot or killed, or there's some violent crime in our community and our young people are failing to achieve.
That is a valid point. But as long as we don't address, I hear you talk about, well, let's address the root causes.
Right.
The root cause is our families have broken up.
Yes.
Our families are not skilled enough to teach their children how to become skilled, how to invest, how to save their money. College for some, trade schools for some, entrepreneurship for some, but it is a formula to get up. And I think we have to do both. I think we have to chew gum and walk too. Yeah,
but I think the black church, because one thing you cannot do, you cannot legislate morality. You cannot,
yes.
And the issues that is driving too many families in our community to be single family households, we're not addressing that as a community like we should. And I think the black church has to be more vocal in that issue and come up with strategies to begin to address the fact that we have to repair our families.
Does the black church have resources to address that low income group? I mean, maybe that's why it hasn't been a great, I'm sure that you do it. I mean, I've known projects you've worked on,
right.
But maybe black churches they don't have the resources or the talent pool to work on that underclass.
I think we do. I do. I think black churches do. I think we have shifted our focus as black churches and not addressed that issue, partly because we are more concerned about having people in the pews than we are about really teaching and preaching those things will benefit our community the most. And that is a shift in the preaching and the teaching that we see today that is much different from what we saw in the 1960s, and if we're going to strengthen the families, then we have to be willing to talk about the formula of success. This is how you get from point A to point B, and we cannot be afraid as the church to talk about that, because as long as we are, we're going to have that 43%, and hopefully it doesn't grow, still struggling to make it and living a quality life.
And that is a huge piece that I hope that you can convince other churches, black churches, to address.
Yeah, my thing is that neither Biden nor Trump can fix that, nor the Democrat and Republican Party. We have to deal with that as the black community. And we have to be honest about what's going on within our community and understanding why we are still struggling and why we have so many problems that we're still facing as a people today. And it started in the 1960s, and we did not address it, and it's gotten worse. From 20%, what was it, 24%, 25% of single parent households in the 1960s to now 73, 74%, over that time period. Yes.
With one stream of income.
Yes. That's
hard.
And it's going to be hard. Yeah, it's hard. And you have multiple children in your family. I know now, me and my wife, make good money together. We have 2 children, and it's tough.
It's tough work.
So I could imagine if it was just me or just her, that the struggle that it would be in raising 2 kids today with the price of everything.
And just to keep them focused.
Yes. And that's true. So I'm one that believes that the church has to shift its focus, and we cannot just be focused on a political or legislation solution to the plight of Black America. But we have to play a key role in that too, and not being afraid, like what you said. If we rebuild the black family, I think, or repair it, John, I think we're going to address a lot of the root causes of a lot of the social ills that we face as a community.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Real Talk. I want to thank John for this conversation. This is not the end of this conversation that we're having today. But join me next time as I bring more Real Talk about the real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to subscribe, to follow this podcast, and share it on Facebook and Twitter. I hope you have been blessed by this conversation today that we have had, and I pray that you have a blessed and awesome day. This is Reverend Harrison. Peace.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.